First of all, congratulations on your plugin. noteGRABBER 2 is out now.
Yes, it just dropped.
Is there a way you could give us a quick demo, maybe screen share?
Absolutely. So when you play a sample, what happens is noteGRABBER shows you every single note. And from there, you just simply use your mouse and just draw over these notes, and it will play the actual pattern. And then once you're happy with the pattern that you have, just click drag MIDI, bring it into your beat, and there you go. It gives you the full pattern.
Would you be willing to give people in the comments a copy of noteGRABBER 2?
Yeah, let's hit, how about 3 people?
3 people in the comments? All right,
sure.
You heard it. So 3 people in the comments will get a copy of noteGRABBER 2 from Navie D. Yo, welcome to another episode of the Larry O Show. Got my co-host to the left of me, as always.
What's going on, y'all? It's Justin Timberlake.
Yo, I've been meaning to bring that up to you, and we never ever talked about it. That's hilarious. Yeah. Everybody thinks that he's well, is that Justin Timberlake in the comments?
Yeah,
literally all the time.
Coming for me in the comments, bro.
Well, I'm not Justin Timberlake. I'm Larry O. We have a special guest today. You definitely know him if you've been on YouTube ever. Massive following on YouTube. Great for the community, the producer community. Great information. Navie D. Thank you so much for joining us, bro. I really, really appreciate it. This is a long time in the works. Happy to have you on. Love your content. Love your stuff. Love what you do for the community.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm excited to be here. Nervous for some reason. Maybe it's because I'm in the presence of Justin Timberlake. I don't know. My heart's racing.
That's right what now. It is. That you know, that star power is real.
Stunned right now.
Yeah. So how's everything, man? I've been FL user for how long?
Oh, honestly, I've started using FL as like the very first thing I used to make beats. This is a little bit of the gray zone where I started off, you know, maybe not doing it completely legally. I'll be 100% honest. But then I purchased FL years and years ago. So I don't know. Hopefully we don't have to cut that out. But yeah, way back in like 2008, maybe somewhere around there.
Yep.
So yeah, very old. And then I hopped on Machine for a little bit. And then when I started YouTube, I started with the intention of, you know, helping as many people as possible. So FL Studio seemed to be the logical choice since pretty much most people use it.
Yeah, I kind of like fell into a luck sort of thing with that. You know, it just so happens that I'm using it already and it just blew up like crazy over the years. So got lucky in that sense. But when did you start the YouTube journey? Because I know you've been doing it for a bit now. And I mean, congrats to the success that you've had there. It's massive.
Thank you very much. I think you and I may have started around the same time. I started 2019, September of 2019. Oh. How about you?
Yeah, with the educational content on Instagram, yeah, around there. Maybe actually like 2017-ish. I dabbled for years and years on Instagram. Started there first. I tried some things out on YouTube that just didn't work, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't consume it enough. I didn't know the platform enough from a creator's perspective. So Instagram is my thing around that same time when I started this style of content. So yeah, it's been a bit, but I mean, you're like, you've got that down pat to the point where you know exactly like what works, what doesn't work. I'm sure you have your kind of, you know, your days and moments, but for the most part, you have like a lot of success on almost every video I see get posted. What's the strategy behind your posting nowadays versus like when you first started out?
Honestly, I think back to when I first started, and I visibly remember like launching my first video, going back to it a week later and just seeing 36 views or something. So I started off exactly where everyone else does. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot more recently. And when I think about a lot of the advice that a lot of people give and a lot of the advice that's shared in the YouTube space, and I'll even say this also applies to beat making in general, the common advice that you always see is 10,000 hours. You have to put your 10,000 hours in. And once you do that, people seem to believe that that will sort of translate to some sort of success. I don't necessarily think that's true. A good sort of substitute for that, or an alternate idea that I've heard from some guy named Naval Ravikant, who I really like, he says the idea of 10,000 iterations is much more in line with what you actually need to do to succeed. So it's the idea of constantly trying to do new things as opposed to just doing the same thing over and over again. Because the advice that you always see is, you got to be consistent. You got to show up every single day. And I think a lot of people believe that means literally making the same video over and over again. And that can be a massive trap. So one of the things that I would say has helped me succeed is, there have been periods over 6, 7 years now where I can remember my channel pretty much dying. Like it was month over month, views are going down, down, down. And if I just kept doing the same thing and went down the road of like consistency, I would probably have fizzled out. But just constantly pushing yourself to do something a little bit different, a little bit new that you might not be comfortable doing, always launching like new ideas or new sort of series is how I think about it. And being open to just taking a massive swing, a massive risk, and possibly failing. There have been videos that I've put out where no one likes it, like it gets like no views and it's just a complete waste of time. But then there are times when I'll just stumble upon an idea that just knocks it out of the ballpark, and that becomes like a new series on my channel. And so I think my advice to anyone who is trying to get into this space, it's just try different things as opposed to just doing the same thing and thinking consistency is just the key. I think there needs to be more than that.
All right, right. Well said, man. I totally agree. How do you go about your day-to-day now when you do find something that like really hits, or when you're in the process of trying to figure out a tweak in something? Like what goes into your day-to-day now? Are you constantly just thinking, because I've noticed that you just stick with YouTube 100%. Like you don't really put much focus on other platforms, which in my eyes is a good thing, because you could see how that and why that works. But like, what's your day-to-day now? 100% focused on YouTube? Like how does that work?
No, I would say nowadays 1 to 2 days out of the week is focused on YouTube. The other 3 days out of my week, I've actually started getting a little bit more into shorts and doing some small stuff on Instagram in the past few weeks. But a lot of it is actually focused on like business stuff, of just focusing on, customer support, trying to get my business products better, thinking of new and working on new projects and whatnot. So I would say at this point, like when I first started YouTube, it was literally every video was 20, 30 hours of work, from, making the beat that's going to be in the video, scripting every single line that I say out, filming it, editing it. But now I sort of cut that down to, I got an editor to work with me. I'm still doing everything up front in terms of scripting and whatnot. But yeah, only maybe 20 to 30% of my time is spent on YouTube. And I'm working a lot more on the business stuff on the behind the scenes now.
What kind of music were you into early on? Like what got you inspired to start making beats?
I don't know if many producers feel this way. I'll throw it to you guys, but at least for me, when I listen to like hip hop, especially, or most music, I don't really care what's happening lyrically. I don't really tune into that as much. I'm just all about the beat. Like, I don't know if that makes me weird, or is that like how most producers
No, that's how
work?
I am. That's how I've always been. Maybe John is slightly different because he's a producer, but he's a lyricist too, artist. So
yeah, I
it might be a little bit
listen to
different.
both for sure. But when I heard like bands for the first time, I wanted to learn about making music, because I was like, are they playing at the same time? Like, are they playing all together in a room? And that's what just genuinely got me curious with making beats and all that. So you're more of like a sonic. So you're listening to the instrumental and all that, and that got you.
Yeah, I would say so. Like when I would listen to hip hop, it was just always the instrumental that would really connect with me. And I remembered like towards the mid 2000s, kind of felt like I was bored of a lot of what was happening in hip hop. That was around the time when, the South was taking over. And for me being Canadian, the opposite of the South, I just wasn't really connecting with much of the music that was coming out at that time. And I remembered buying a CD by Jay Dilla called the Rough Draft EP.
There you go.
And in the booklet, he had mentioned something along the lines of like, I made this album just because I wanted something to play in my own truck when I drive around. And I was like, that's really like inspirational in that he just wanted music that he liked. He wanted to make music because he wanted something to listen to. And so I thought, maybe I should do the same thing. Instead of sitting here complaining about, oh, hip hop is dead, it's no good anymore. Why don't I just make music that I want to hear more of? And that's what started me on my journey of producing. And obviously the first years and years I was making nothing but garbage. But yeah, that was like the first initial spark that made me want to start.
That's usually how it goes, man. I think that's when the best stuff comes about, whether it's music or the content. Because I think, a big topic for producers, I think why I love to stick on the topic of content creation, especially for producers, I think most producers don't know or don't realize or don't believe or don't want to hear that content creation is one of the biggest things that they're missing out on if they haven't started with it yet. I mean, what advice can you give a producer listening and watching right now that says, like I'm not great at making content, or I don't think I need to make content. I think if I just make good music, people are going to start to notice me.
Yeah, I think that's ironically the exact mentality that I had for my entire 20s, I would say. I was just very against like, oh, I know everyone always says you have social media, you got to grow your presence, you got to do this, that, and the third. And I always, what was in my mind was always just like, why can't it just be about the music? Why can't I just make music and put it out there and have that be enough? And that's a very common idea that I see a lot of producers say and a lot of people just in social media in general. But when I look back at it now, I completely realized that that was a belief that I had that was 100% out of fear. Yeah. I just did not like the idea of posting, my face, putting myself out there and confronting whatever might happen, people insulting me, people thinking I'm garbage. It was completely fear-based, and so I just wanted to stick behind something that I was comfortable doing up to that point, what was just making music. And anything else, I was just like, no, I'm not going to touch that. For me, my change happened as soon as I hit like 30, and I was still working, a 9-to-5 job, pretty much entry level. That was sort of like my rock bottom where I was like, I've spent 10 years and I've kind of gotten nowhere. And I was like, I need to just take things seriously and actually push myself to do the things that I'm ultimately afraid to do. And I think that's the advice that I would give a lot of producers and creatives in general out there, which is a belief that I have now is when it comes to content creation or just succeeding in general, is that you get rewarded for doing what everyone else is too afraid, lazy, or stupid to do. Kind of feels a little bit savage saying that, but
true,
the comments that I always see is people asking, can I start a YouTube channel but not show my face? Can I do a voiceless channel? And it's like, yeah, you can, but the reason you get rewarded is because 99% of producers feel the same way. They're also scared to put their face on camera and speak into a microphone and put themselves out there. But you get outweighed rewards because you're going to do things as a result of doing things that most people are, again, too afraid, lazy, or stupid to do. Most people like the idea of just turning on their camera, recording themselves, making a beat and being like, all right, I'll just throw it up on YouTube. But for me, like I spend like one of those days of the week is just writing a full script because I know most people are going to be too lazy to do that. They're not going to be willing to actually sit there and write down their thoughts and actually, spend the time to think about whether their beliefs and their ideas about music production are actually true. Like there are so many times when I find myself running into a roadblock because I'm like, how do I explain this thing that I think is true, even though there's like no evidence of it? And I realize that it's like a crony belief where it's just something that gets repeated over and over again, but it might not actually be true. So I think my advice to anyone is you have to be willing to do what most people are not willing to do to get that outweighed benefit. And yeah, the sooner you do it, the better your life can become.
Bars.
Fact. Yeah, facts,
Bars.
bro. It's so true. It's really, people don't want to hear it, but it's just, it is what it is. It's 100%
Everyone's going to
true.
have their own journey with that. I think, again, for me, I had to hit like my own rock bottom of, I'd been producing for like 10 plus years up to that point. I had succeeded at some level. I got to work with some really awesome artists. At that point, I had worked on this pretty big soundtrack for this video game. At the same time, I looked at, where I was in life, and I was like, well, this rapper that I worked with, he's huge now. I worked with him on his project. I'm pretty much similar to where I was before. This video game that I worked on, this guy became a millionaire because his game sold millions of copies. I worked with him on this project, and I'm not a millionaire at that point, or even still. And I got, a small amount of the money that he got from that project. And I realized it's because I was always putting myself in these situations where I didn't have to take that much risk. Like, for example, if you're, this guy that made this video game, he worked on it for like 5-6 years without knowing whether it was going to succeed or not, day in, day out. He worked on it over and over again. He did all the social media. He put in all this risk, and his name's on the thing. Like, if it fails, like, his name's not going to mean much in the industry because people are going to be like, oh, that's that guy that made that game. Garbage. And same thing with like these rappers that put out these projects. Like, if you look at Chance the Rapper, for example, he puts out one sort of bad album. No one wants to listen to his music anymore. But the producers that worked on that project, their reputation goes untouched. They're pretty much fine. And so I realized that you have to put your name on something and put some accountability on your own name and take a risk and put yourself out there. And that's how you get those outsized returns, because if you're constantly that guy that's behind the scenes, yeah, you're going to be in a safer position if things don't go right. But when things do go right, you're not going to get that outsized return from that project going well either. And so that's when I made that decision of like, hey, I'm going to start doing YouTube videos and put my name out there, put my name on it. And yeah, it's terrifying. I can put my videos out there and people will be like, oh, this guy's a goof. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's the risk that you have to run, because like, that's the only way you're going to get that big reward at the end.
How do you deal with that sort of thing? Like the hate in the comments and maybe in emails and DMs. Like, how do you deal with that? Because I know everybody has their own way, and you do have to get to a certain point where you do have a thicker skin in this industry, and especially in this, when you're putting yourself out there so publicly. Like, how do you deal with that when you do come across it now, maybe versus at the beginning?
Yeah, I think at the beginning I maybe struggled with it a little bit more, but again, at that point, I started doing this when I was like 30 years old, and so people saying mean things to me is not as big of a factor when you're like a 30-year-old man. Yeah. But ultimately, I think the thing that I keep in mind is I don't take any of it personally. Most of the time, when people say things, it's like if people leave a comment about, hey, this thing that you said is absurd, most of the times they're not really arguing with the thing that I said in the video. It's their own interpretation, which is colored by their own desire and want for some sort of recognition. Most of the people that end up leaving mean comments, if I click on their channel, they're also doing like tutorials and stuff. And it's this sort of thing of my understanding of the reason why people leave hateful comments is because I might make them feel worse if they're struggling to do the thing that I'm doing at that time. And so just keeping that in mind and just being very compassionate with this person, because I used to feel the same way when I was young. Like, I remember watching videos of, do you guys remember Arab Music?
Oh yeah, he's from Rhode Island.
Yeah, and so I remember watching videos of him making beats on his MPC. He's in the studio with The Alchemist, and I felt very bitter. I was like, this guy's young like me, and he's making beats, and look at all the views that he's getting, like all the fame that he's getting, the recognition. And I was like, I'm sitting here, no one knows who I am. And I had that same feeling that a lot of people have when they leave bitter comments on my videos. I'm just very compassionate about it, and I understand that it has very little to do with the person making the video or the content or the person making the beats, and it's just more so how that person feels when they're watching you and they're just not happy with where they are. So if you get a comment like that, anyone watching, just remember that it has very little to do with what you're actually doing, and just keep it moving.
Right. Yeah, you got to let it roll off. You talked
How about
about
you? Like, what's your strategy?
I just let it roll off. I laugh. You know, if it's if it's a wild comment, I'll hide it. And I just let it roll off. I don't care. I really don't care. I love the positive comments. I praise the positive comments. I try to go above and beyond for positive DMs and comments, but with the negative stuff, and I don't mean negative as in like, oh, like they just disagree with the way I did something or the way I'm presenting it. That's not, to me, that's not a negative. It's an opinion. It's just when it becomes a little bit like negative and hateful, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's, he's hurting somehow. Like I hope he figures that out. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I come from a early on, my first introduction to like public was I was in a hip hop metal band, so you can imagine how that goes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, and the hate from
they coming for you in the comments,
and it wasn't the hip hop side that hated. It was the metal side that hated more than anything.
The metalheads, they hate when there's like peanut butter with the chocolate. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like,
they hated, and it was a lot of comments. I mean, granted, we put some music out that probably wasn't that great, especially early on, and we got a lot of eyeballs on it, and then slowly I realized like, hey, like we have a lot of people that really like us, and there's some people that don't like us and hate us, but like,
it's like volatile or polarized.
Yeah, and it would be like really hateful stuff, like I don't even know like what I could say on here that's gonna like get flagged, like hateful stuff,
the
like
whole 30 seconds.
Yeah, like bad stuff in the comments, and like that early on helped me, especially when I started my own personal brand. Just really not care about negative comments, because it was literally like nothing compared to what I was already used to being in the band. Nothing ever was said in person, but it was.
You touched on something interesting though, where you mentioned, because I guess I'm a little bit different from what you just mentioned in that I also don't put much stock into the positive comments either, because I know that the crowd is very fickle. At one point, someone who really likes me is gonna be the person who ends up disliking me later. And so I tend to not put too much stock in the negative or the positive. I just kind of have this view of putting my work out there, and if it seems to resonate with people, God bless, that's great. And other times, if it doesn't, it's just everything's like a learning experience. But I do feel like I don't want to get into that danger of thinking I am the man and thinking, oh, I am the greatest YouTuber tutorial guy here. Look at all these comments. Because I know that, I've gone through it enough times where things are going well and then they don't for months and months straight. And so I have to constantly be on point and never, think I'm the greatest, because that can turn at any moment.
Right. Mm-hmm. You're right, bro.
Especially like the outside validation. You know what I mean? Like just let the craft be what you're doing it for. The process and the, you're sharing it because it's meaningful to you, whether good or bad, what people think of it. It's just like you're putting it out because it's your path.
Right.
Yeah, it's this very strange balance, because at one hand, I do like the idea of just like do what you feel and do what resonates with you. But there's another, like, to be practical here, maybe it's not as sexy to talk about if we're in the art space, which is, you also have to balance the other side of it, which is if you're trying to make a living off of this thing, you also have to weigh like how many views did this get? How well is this doing for business? And so there's this really odd tension back and forth where I know that there's some videos that I really like the idea of making, but every single time in the past that I've made them, like 2% of my audience actually watches it. And so, yeah, it's a very tough balance of weighing those two things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of how I go about whether deciding something's a success or not, I tend to look at, this is something that it's just like more ideas that just come to my head, where I don't know if you guys have this experience as well, where something that I've come to realize is that a view is not a view. One view is not weighed equally with another view. And I can sort of draw back examples of this where 1 or 2 years ago, my channel was probably at its biggest. I was putting out videos that were getting like 100,000 views in the first couple days. I thought like everything's going well. And what I realized was I was making videos that were a little bit more sort of documentarian or historian where I was looking back at past beats and looking at the history of what was happening behind the beats and coming up with like a little mini documentary. And while on the front of it, I can look at, I'm getting million plus views, everything's going great. On the back end of it, I saw that like my business is kind of actually declining. And I realized that the types of people that were watching these more historian documentary videos were not actually producers. They were just people who may have a general interest in hip hop. They'll watch this video about, this video, the 10 beats that Jay-Z rejected or whatever. And so I realized that maybe going back to being actually helpful to the people who are my core audience that I can actually be the most value to was a decision that I made that was very scary because I was basically agreeing to get a fraction of the views that I was getting before. But at the same time, the art that I was making, the videos that I was making was actually more impactful, if you want to say,
on the
not
business
only to my
side.
audience, but to me. So yeah, it's just like a view is not a view. And that's yet another thing that I would probably advise people to think about if they're getting into content. Just simply chasing maximum amount of fame, going for viral stuff, going for viral hits. If you think that is going to ultimately help you, quit your day job and be able to escape sort of the 9 to 5 that you're trying to get away from, it might be possible that doing something that is far less popular is actually going to get you there much faster. Just understanding where you can provide the most to the smallest amount of people and really being very important to those people is probably a much better strategy than being somewhat of a known entity, but having not very many people care about what you're doing. It's just like light entertainment in the background. I think just being careful of those two ideas and not chasing numbers is something important.
That's a really good point. You're making me think right now too, because I'm always like, and I've obviously been doing that with my brand too, like just focusing on just producers. Like, how can I just help producers? That's really it. But I've always had this thing in my mind, like, how can that be more broad? Isn't it better to have more of a broad audience? Isn't it better to have more of a general audience? But in this case, like you're saying, maybe not, especially if you're trying to create a well-run, rounded business on it.
Because those people ultimately probably don't really care that much about what you're doing. It's just light entertainment in the background, and you'd just be better off really tripling down on knowing what your own strengths are and going hard on that and figuring out who actually values that strength as an audience member.
Yep. To just change gears a little bit, you mentioned the business side of things a few times, and first of all, congratulations on your plugin. I don't know if people know this, but like, I'm sure they do. They've seen your content, they've seen the ads and whatnot. But noteGRABBER 1, but noteGRABBER 2 is out now, correct?
Yes, it just dropped a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month now. Yeah, around
So
there.
how's that going? How's that process been for you? Because this is your first plugin. Well, noteGRABBER 1 was your first plugin ever.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. Like, honestly, I was very nervous putting this thing out. I built this tool that I felt was very valuable because I use it pretty much in every beat now. But whether or not people find this valuable is a very scary thing. I mean, putting out, a drum pack that you worked a couple months on is one thing, but investing tens of thousands of dollars into something and waiting for a year and a half, which was how long noteGRABBER 1 took, and then 7 months for noteGRABBER 2. It's terrifying. It's like you're putting a lot of your future into this thing that you think people will value, but you just don't know. It was very scary, but nonetheless, when it finally did come out, the reception has been very positive. I'm super excited about this and taking it to the next level and getting into as many people's hands as possible, because it's one of the first things that I've built where I truly have like 100% conviction in it, just because I use it all the time. This is a little bit of a thing that I struggle with as well, where, when you put out a tutorial video, for me, this is all stuff that I already know and I already have this knowledge in my brain. And it's hard to fully understand just how valuable this might be to someone who's watching, just because I'm like, oh, this is stuff that I already know. And so it's hard to sort of make that connection. Whereas for this, just a very tangible tool. It's not like a tutorial video. It's a thing that you can actually use.
Right.
It's the very first time where I'm like,
Very
oh,
helpful.
this is,
Yeah, definitely helpful.
extremely helpful for
Can you
my
explain,
own
like,
process.
if people don't know that are listening and watching right now, like what noteGRABBER does?
Sure. So the most common tool that people probably are familiar with that it's somewhat similar is an audio to MIDI tool. So most DAWs have their own audio to MIDI tool within them that's native, or things like Melodyne. These are great tools, so don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with these. But the issue that I constantly had was, I'm a sample-based producer. And so I would always struggle to take my sample, the loop that I built, and chop it up, and now I have this great sounding loop. But adding sounds to it was always a struggle to me, and getting it to turn into a finished beat was something that was just so hard for me. And I always thought, like, I wish there was a tool that could just show me everything that's inside the sample. And so I tried out using, audio to MIDI tools, and the problem that I kept running into was they would always miss notes or get notes wrong. There's always something that just did not sound right. But the issue was that, with an audio to MIDI tool, you basically just get an automated output of one pattern and that's it. And so I thought, I wish I could just actually see everything and then choose the notes that I want. And so that's basically what I built. So noteGRABBER, what it does differently is that instead of just giving you an instant result and you have this pattern in your piano roll, it's instead going to show you every single note inside the sample. And then from there, it gives you control to choose the exact notes that you want. And so you're never going to miss notes or get notes wrong because you're the one that's in control. And so this has been so helpful for me. Whenever I want to build chords around a sample, I can just literally look at what's happening in the sample, and then I can use noteGRABBER to build the chords right into it and then export it out. If I want to build bass lines, I can see the root notes, and I don't have to worry about, is this the actual right note? Because sometimes those audio to MIDI tools will just give you completely wrong data.
So dope.
So yeah, it's just been such a help building patterns around my sample and finally turning my, small ideas into finished beats. And this has made everything so much more easy.
Yeah, I love it. I've been using it for a bit now. But like, is there a way you could give us a quick demo, maybe screen share, and show like a quick demo of in action?
Absolutely. All right. So this is how noteGRABBER looks here. It's very simple. I tried to make it as lean, as simple as possible. I don't want to add too many doodads and dials. But very simply, what happens is when you play your sample, let me reset this here 1 second and make sure. Sorry, there we go. So when you play a sample, what happens is noteGRABBER shows you every single note. And from there, you just simply use your mouse and just draw over these notes, whichever ones you want. With noteGRABBER 2, we've also added this quick grab dial here. So you just turn this up and it'll start grabbing notes for you. So this works similarly to a audio to MIDI tool where it's kind of doing the exact same thing, but there are times when it might miss a note that you actually want from the sample. And so you can use quick dial or quick grab to just instantly get a fast result. And then afterwards, you can come in and edit the actual pattern that it pulls, get exactly what you want. You can even hit preview and it will play the actual pattern in noteGRABBER.
John's mind blown. John's mind blown.
This is gas.
I've been telling you about this.
Nah, this is gas.
I've been telling you.
Yeah, this is I use this so often. And then once you're happy with the pattern that you have, just click drag MIDI, bring it into your beat, and there you go. It gives you the full pattern.
There's really nothing else like this that's this accurate. Because in FL, you could do it a couple of different ways. And I think I saw you do it like something about it in way in the past about like with Wave Candy maybe.
Yeah. So this plugin is like taking the best of all these different tools and just putting it into one. Because yeah, you're right. Like when you use,
but it's not good. It's not great. Like you have to change every little setting for you to see some notes in there. And then like the audio to MIDI tool inside Edison, when there's chords playing, forget it. Reverb, delay, forget it. It's not getting almost anything.
I got a quick question. So sometimes when you sample and like you pitch bend around and all that, the sample will end up kind of like in between notes. What's the compensation like for noteGRABBER on that sort of thing?
So it will show you the visible bend in noteGRABBER, and with quick grab, it will create like small micro notes. So with bending, it probably isn't going to get you an instant result like that because you'll have to bend it yourself. But it can at least show you when the bend happens, what notes it goes from and to, how fast or slow the bend happens. So it can still give you some useful information about that very particular situation of note bending.
Fire. Cool.
So dope, bro. Yeah, I mean, what other? I mean, what's the big difference between noteGRABBER 1 and noteGRABBER 2?
So yeah, we added the quick grab dial. So that's been a tremendous help because a lot of people were saying like it can get tedious drawing every single note, especially if the sample is really complex. That could be a pain. So the quick grab dial really helped there, as well as preview. Hearing the notes actually play before you export it can also help save some time going back and forth. There are small little things like we added a grid. So if you want to line up the grid with the sample and see where notes are hitting in terms of comparing it to like the BPM of the project, small things like that. But I would say quick grab and the preview are the two major features that like everyone was asking for, and we finally added it in. And like everyone's just, putting away all the other tools, not using it anymore. And yeah, the amount of people are saying like noteGRABBER is a must-have for every single beat that they make. If you're a sample-based producer, I want to say that. Yeah, like if you don't use samples, or if you're just like doing very simple loops, like you literally drag and drop something from Splice, and you just want a very basic like translation, I'll be 100% honest, noteGRABBER probably isn't going to be that valuable to you. But if you're a producer who's like chopping up your samples constantly, you're doing tons of different manipulations to your samples, like it's such a pain to have to stop what you're doing, print out the audio, bring it into your tool, do this full analysis, and then every single time, like say you want to do a pitch shift, you have to do the entire process again. But with noteGRABBER, it works in real time. So you just literally put it as an effect on your sample, and you can see every single change that you're making right there.
It's so dope because like you showed it and didn't really say much about it, but all you got to do is like put it on the channel. Even if you've chopped, even if you're actively chopping up a sample, so like you could have the sample inside, like you have Edison open or you have SliceX open or anything like that. You just throw noteGRABBER on the end of the channel, and anything in real time that it comes to, you don't have to print it, you don't have to do anything like that. It just it gets all those notes. And those two new features, like that quick grab, you said that's fire. I had one question. If do you still find that if something has heavy effects, heavy reverb, delay, that you might get anything inaccurate, or is it still like really accurate? And what do you suggest if something is coming through that maybe it's not getting every single note correctly? Maybe deverbing something, because there are features that do that now.
Yeah, I think it's still going to have that sort of requirement, especially if you have like a very dense sample. It can help you to, EQ it beforehand. Let's say you just want a baseline from a sample. Maybe EQing it or doing stem splitting beforehand is going to help you just see things a little bit easier. With things like, reverb and delay, it's going to make the visual part of it a little bit more difficult to actually read. But at the same time, if you put that through a traditional audio to MIDI, like you'd be dead in the water. It would just be full of junk. Yeah.
It literally
Whereas
gets nothing.
Whereas this, you can also like play around with the gain and the range dials to, it will basically visually change how noteGRABBER looks. So you can see the fainter notes a little bit more clearly. And you can also do that in real time. So it does give you a chance. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, just lean back and it's going to do everything for you. It's still going to have its limitations. I don't want to pretend like it's a miracle product, but it's still, in my opinion, is the most accurate solution.
Oh, it definitely
for producers
is.
to use samples.
It definitely
that shit's
is.
gas.
Yeah, there's really nothing. There's nothing like that out there.
I like that a lot.
And I can only imagine where it's going to go from here and where you take it from here. This is obviously just the beginning. Because how long have you've had this out for now? Over a year?
So noteGRABBER 1 came out October 1st of last year. So it's not even a year old.
Not even a year old.
Version 2 is already out.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're already thinking of things to add for version 3, but I'm very happy with where it's at right now.
Because How do you feel about AI in plugins or incorporating that into your future plugins? Because this isn't AI. This is just algorithmic.
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat excited for AI and somewhat hesitant about AI. This is like a very hot topic. I know a lot of I've seen you guys discuss it a bunch of times. I think the ethics of it right now are probably not in the right place because artists are not being compensated correctly. And there's that whole part of it, which I think needs to be corrected. But the actual use of it, I'm pretty excited about. I think this tool could be very helpful for someone who's like, go to an AI, say, I want a guitar pattern that sounds like 70s jazz or whatever. It gives you that audio, but it's not going to probably, at least for the time being, be able to give you like the full breakdown of the notes that it's building. And so that's where noteGRABBER could come in, and you can use that, bring it into your project. You can look at all the notes, and then they'll just help you build around that stem that an AI could create. So I think I see noteGRABBER being helpful in that sense. But again, if an AI is able to print out notes for you, then noteGRABBER will be completely useless. That's something I have in the back of my mind of like, oh, where is this going to go? Where is AI going to go? Is it going to be able to, understand notes as well as a human being is? I don't know. So it's something that I'm excited about and nervous about at the same time.
Hey, but you have this out there, and like you said earlier, it's all about risk and just doing what you feel is right and what works for you now, just kind of like compounding on that and just running with it. Sometimes you just have to run with it. Like there's a lot of things that are going to be out of our control, especially with AI.
100%. And you can always pivot. You always do something else. That's always like the job of the entrepreneur or the person who's creating art. Is just like you have to be willing to look at what's happening. That's the main
takeaway from a lot of successful people. Like, and you've mentioned it without really mentioning it. The pivots are more important than anything. It's the consistency and like in the sense of like sticking with it and trying some new things. And obviously, like not like you also mentioned earlier, not sticking with things that aren't just working. Just to say, I'm doing this every day, but you're doing the same thing that's really not working every day. So switch it up a little bit. Pivot. It's the pivots more than anything. I've pivoted 1,000 times in the 6-7 years that I've been doing this style of content. You pivot.
Yeah, me too, man. It's just like you're constantly trying to put yourself out of business in a way where you're trying to be the new next wave with the new idea that comes in and is better than the old version. Because if you don't do it yourself to yourself, someone else is going to do it to you. So yeah, you got to do it yourself.
Yep. You mentioned earlier before we started recording that you had a tip that isn't really talked about and discussed. So this might be a hidden gem.
Here is my secret FL Studio tip. So let's say you have a drum sound that you like, but maybe you want it to sound thicker or more full, or maybe you want to create an alternate version of it to create a sort of B snare for your beat. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll start reaching for effects like distortion, compression, and pull up all these complex plugins that might cost a lot of money. But within FL Studio, there's this really sneaky way of really improving or making your drum sound much more thick or creating a different version of it. And you can do it all within this one screen here. So the way to do it is first you want to turn on normalize. So what this will do is take your sound and maximize the volume so it's going to constantly always hit peak volume. So as you can hear, the volume, which went up a tiny bit, nothing too crazy so far. But what happens next is you want to turn up this in fader here. So what in does is it traditionally creates a fade into the actual sound. But if you have normalize turned on, what happens is it changes the shape of the sound completely. So if you take a listen to how this sounds now, you get a completely different sound. And if you sort of get in between, you can hear how thick this sounds compared to this. Yeah, and so if you just play with this dial, you can get some pretty like absurd effects and like different. You can take one sound and just create something completely different and really thicken it up, or just create an alternate version of it that sounds slightly more full. So this is like my go-to whenever I have drums that just sound weak. Instead of going through the process of adding tons of different effects on, I'll just simply play with this normalized in combination.
I've never done it like that specifically. You know where I thought you were going in a direction. I thought you were gonna go to pre-computed effects and do the boost. That's where I thought you were going at the beginning of. I was like, I know where he's going. Nope. No. Wrong.
Yeah, that's so weird. I've never messed with
that. I'm familiar with those knobs and those settings in there, but I've never specifically done it like that. Where, yeah, I normalize a lot of my samples, but I don't then like adjust like the fade in, especially on a snare. I'm not even thinking in that direction. I want that punch in the snare. You know, I'm not even thinking of fading in. On a snare
so like
or something like that.
Combining those two things of like taking your raw snare that has that attack and then cloning it out and doing this body trick, you can create that snap with the original snare and then this fullness with this secondary snare. You can just do a lot of crazy things with it.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you and kind of put you on the spot. You could say no if you want to say no, but I don't know if we talked about this before. Would you be willing to give people in the comments or like one person in the comments a copy of noteGRABBER 2? Is that something that you'd be willing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. How should we do this?
However many you want to give. And then we can kind of come up with maybe just somebody in the comments to get people like dropping comments and whatnot.
Yeah, let's hit, how about 3 people?
3 people in the comments? All right.
Sure.
You heard it. 3 people in the comments. Just comment anything. But the ones that stand out are gonna be the ones that get picked. So 3 people in the comments will get a copy of noteGRABBER 2 from Navie D. Yeah, I guess like let us know where you can find noteGRABBER. I'm gonna drop it down in the comments section below. I mean, in the description below too. So just socials, websites, whatever you want to drop here. Just let them know where they can find you and find the plugin.
Yeah, just it'd mean a lot to me if anyone out there who uses samples, just give it a try. Just go to notegrabber.com. It's a free trial. You can try it out for 14 days. If you don't like it, I understand completely. But I think if you're a sample-based producer, this is just going to be such a game changer. So notegrabber.com is where I would lead people.
That's what I love about what you do with the plugin too. Not enough companies are doing free trials. It's just
I've
hey,
seen
like,
that more and more nowadays.
See
like
a
you
video.
Have to, like,
buy it.
Yeah, you have to give a credit card and like pre-accept a subscription and stuff. I'm just like, I hate doing that personally, so I don't want to do that with this plugin. It's just like offer a free trial, one-time payment, that's it. With noteGRABBER 1, I offered this as a free upgrade as well. So I just wanted to be very pro-consumer here and not be like, a lot of these plugin companies seem to be very scandalous nowadays, so I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, I love that. When I saw you dropping and promoting everything, I'm like, that's a good, really, really good idea, because that's gonna. There's so many plugins out there. There's so many things. There's so many sample packs. There's so much out there that people really, really need to be convinced to drop some money on something. No matter if they followed the person or the company for a really long time, it takes a lot of convincing. It takes almost no convincing to just do 14-day free trial. You know, no questions asked, no card involved whatsoever. That's a huge, and then you just win them over with the product.
100%. I truly believe in noteGRABBER and that it's going to convince you that it is a phenomenal plugin. And so I have no worries about, will people buy this or not? I think if I was like dropping an EQ or something, that's very hard to convince people that it's going to be better than every other EQ. But with like a tool like this, it just seems so different than everything else out there that I'm completely happy to give a 14-day trial because I think it's that good.
I love it, man. I really appreciate you hopping on here. Let's definitely do this again.
Yeah, man. Very impressive plugin, man. Like blown away by it for sure.
Awesome.
I had a lot of fun, guys.
I've been telling him he's been sleeping. he's away.
I'm just so like, let's put it this way. I'm still on like FL20 just because I'm like locked out of like my account or something. Like when I sit down to make beats, I'm like, I'm gonna sit down and make beats real quick. And then I'm never thinking like, let me grab something off the internet. But the fact that this got its own website and all that stuff, that's easy for somebody like me. That's just like, what is it? Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna definitely check this out. This is sick.
And you're a sample based.
I am super sample based. I love making beats with the samples and all that. And it's sick to hear that Dilla was kind of like a conduit for this happening. Like that whole liner note that he had where it was like, I'm making this for me, is in a lot of ways it mirrors your philosophy on your own sort of like, I need a tool like this for me You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. I never really thought of that. That's exactly why I built this thing. I was like, I wish this thing existed.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting around for a plugin company to hopefully make it one day, I was like, you know what? Let's just make things happen.
You
Let's do
filled
it.
a need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what it's about.
That's true.
Finding
Yeah.
that.
Good stuff, man. Keep it
Yeah.
up. Keep
Really,
up the
really
great
good
work.
stuff.
Thank
Navie,
you
I
so
really
much, fellas.
appreciate you, man. I appreciate you coming on here, and let's definitely do this again.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2, man. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
Later, guys.
Later. So if you haven't already, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Go follow Navie D and grab noteGRABBER 2 and share this with a friend if you get me.